Hi everybody, it's Jason Lee from PHL 17. Welcome to the latest edition of Legends of Philly. This is episode number 2, and my guest for this show has been in my basement for years in bobblehead form. I'm glad to have the real thing with me here for this edition. Philly's great Larry Bowa. Larry, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. How's everything going there?
It's going great, Larry. Thank you so much for doing this. I don't mind telling you, as a lifelong Phillies fan, you probably get this all the time. As a lifelong Phillies fan, it's a thrill to talk to you. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So I've got this bobblehead next to me. I got to ask you, what's it like to be a bobblehead? I mean, what's it like seeing yourself in bobblehead form? Because that's something that most of us will never experience. What was it like for you?
Well, the first time it ever happened, it was neat. I've had a few, and I guess the biggest thing is you want to make sure there's a resemblance, and most of them are pretty good. They do a good job.
Yeah, this one's
But I
pretty
guess,
good.
yeah, I guess when you get a bobblehead, that means that you've done okay when you played. So I look at it that way.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, the uniform on this bobblehead doll is my all-time favorite uniform. The old school Phillies P with the powder blue jersey. What was your favorite uniform that you wore?
I like the powder blue. We seem to win a lot of games when we wore the powder blue, and baseball players are very superstitious. And
Yeah.
when we started winning games with that powder blue, we kept it going. We didn't get to wear them all the time, but we wore them a lot.
Right. It's a great look. But speaking of uniforms, I want to ask you about what was it called? The Saturday Special, the all burgundy uniform. I've heard you tell a great story about you and Greg Luzinski going to management saying you refused to wear those things. Can you tell us that story?
Well, first of all, we got beat big time wearing that uniform. Uh, I don't know who we were playing, but they beat us up pretty good that night. And then I told Bull, Greg Luzinski, I said, "You look like a big grape in that thing." So we got to bang these uniforms. So we went up and we got rid of them after one game. So, but it reminded us of softball players. They looked like a softball uniform. But the fact that we got beat up, whoever we played that night, that was a bad omen. So we said we're not going to wear them anymore.
Well, it goes back to what you just said, how players are superstitious, right?
We're very superstitious.
Now they brought that uniform back. Was it last year?
They
What were your
did.
thoughts on that?
I think they did. They look good. I get to watch it from upstairs in the GM booth, and I think they look better when you don't have to wear them. So they look good from a distance, and but I think when you have to wear them, it reminds you of a softball game more.
Yeah. All right, I want to go back to your early days, Larry, if you don't mind. Now, your dad was involved with baseball, correct? Is that where you developed your love of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bat and a ball around my house since I was able to walk. My dad played, and he managed up as high as AAA baseball. So he got to teach me the fundamentals of the game, and he was always there for me to throw batting practice, hit ground balls, whatever I needed to do. He was right there for me, and he gave me a great insight as to how you're supposed to play the game. Fundamentally, you have to be sound. Especially me not being a big guy, I had to do certain things, and if I didn't do those certain things, then there was a good chance that I wouldn't have never made the big league. So I owe all that to my dad. There's no question about that.
Now, I read somewhere, and tell me if this is wrong. I read somewhere you got cut from your high school team 3 times. Is that true?
True story. Yeah, he told me I was too small, and that's another thing that my dad told me. He said, if you play basketball or football, you have to be a certain size to be successful there. He says, but in baseball, if you do what you're supposed to do, there's doesn't matter how big you are. If you know how to play the game and have skills, you can make any team you want. Well, and it so happened that summer I went out and I played in a summer league game, and the junior college coach who happened to be scouting the summer league, asked me if I'd come out for the city college team, and I said, I didn't even make my high school team, so I don't think there's a chance I'm going to make the junior college team. And he said, well, if you come out, I will give you a fair opportunity to make the team. So I went out and I made the team. I made all conference 2 years in a row, and then eventually I signed out of Sacramento. The scout was Eddie Bachman, and basically that's how that sort of went down. Never got drafted, so then they had was the first year of the draft, I think in '66. So, and I was not drafted. Didn't play high school and ended up playing 16 years in the big leagues.
I'll tell you, that's a really inspirational story for kids watching. So yeah, so you're a guy, you were told all along you're too small, you couldn't play the game, you get cut 3 times from your high school team, you don't get drafted in the Major League Baseball draft yet. You had a very, very good career.
Well, and I think a lot of that. When I go to speak to the to banquets of little leaguers or Babe Ruth leaguers, I like to share that story because there's a lot of kids that maybe they aren't big in stature, but they know how to play the game. They got a big heart. They're very smart. Um, and I try to pass that story along that if you really believe you can do something, don't let somebody tell you you can't. If especially if you have skills that can enable you to reach your goal. That's what happened to me. So, and you look at baseball now, and there's a lot of guys that aren't real big in stature, but they're very good baseball players playing the game as we speak.
Yeah, so many players excel mainly on heart, and you can't really underestimate that, right? You just
Well,
can't.
in this day and age, it's all analytic stuff, and they can't measure what's up here or in your heart. And I don't care
Exactly.
what kind of computer you have. So there's going to be some people overlooked because right now it's the end all be all in baseball. And I'm a firm believer that there's some good stuff in analytics, but there's also stuff that you might as well throw it out the window because it doesn't mean anything to me. And, I think there should be a happy medium there. Go with the experience of who the manager is, go with the experience, the eye test, and use certain analytics. I think if we can reach that happy medium, I think you're going to see the game being improved a little bit more.
Oh, I agree totally. So let me ask you this: so when you get to the Phillies weren't very good back then. We all know you don't like to lose. Probably more so than anybody I've ever seen in baseball. You just don't like to
Right.
lose. So how did you handle all the losing back then? Was it just a question of, hey, you're glad to be in the major leagues? How'd you handle it?
Well, it was hard for me because when I went through our system in A, double A, triple A, we won the championship every year. So I wasn't really used to losing, but I've also talked to a lot of people on that baseball team that were veterans that said, we have a young team and we're going to take our lumps. Now, I never accept losing. I learned how to deal with it because it was a young team and we got beat up until the mid 70s. We got beat up pretty good. But I think along the way there, when you lose games and you fail, so to speak, as far as wins and losses are concerned, if you really pay attention, you can learn by the mistakes you made or the mistakes the teams made. And as I look back on it, the culmination of winning everything in 1980, you say, man, even though those were tough times, we learned a lot going through those losing experiences, and it paid off at the end for us.
Talking about the 1980 team, so when you guys start to get good, you win 3 division championships, 76, 77, 78, but you can't get to the World Series. The team then acquires Pete Rose in free agency, and everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people say Pete Rose brought that team over the hump. Do you agree with that? Was
I,
he that important?
I thought he was very important to our team. Somebody coming from the outside, because most of the guys played, we all came up together. Schmitty, Bull, Booney, myself. And I think there's something to that when somebody comes from a different organization and they come in and tell you, hey, you guys are really good. I don't know why you guys aren't winning. When I say not winning, not getting to the World Series, I think that he sort of pushed us a little bit. And I also think that Dallas Green had a lot to do with it. So, there were two parts that were missing, getting Pete and then Dallas Green coming in with his trademark of not being afraid to jump somebody if they weren't doing their job. And I think that combination, and then finally us coming up together through the system, we were tired of getting to the playoffs and not advancing, and finally getting over the hump was something special.
Talk to me about Dallas Green, because I remember back then hearing stories about how the team clashed with Dallas Green, but in the end, that's kind of what motivated you to win, correct?
Yeah, I think Dallas. Danny Ozark was the manager before Dallas down there, and Danny Ozark to me did a great job. His personality was a lot different than Dallas's. So I think the guys that I don't want to use the word sensitive, but didn't like the screaming and hollering.
Right.
Big adjustment for them. For me, it was an adjustment. I sort of liked Dallas getting on everybody. Got on me, everybody. If we weren't doing our job, he just didn't get on you for getting on you. If we weren't doing our job, and I don't mean I don't mean if you didn't get hits. I mean if you made mental mistakes, not putting your foot on the pedal when you're playing a bad team and you got them up 5 or 6 runs, you let them get back in the game. Things like that. Dallas wasn't afraid to air his frustrations out on us. His first speech was, "You guys think you're better than you are, and you haven't won a World Series." And you know what? He was right.
Yeah, really.
We were pretty good, but until you get that ring, the last guy standing, to me, everybody ends the season with a loss except for the best team in baseball. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how far you get. If you don't win it, you end the season on a losing streak. So finally, they ended on a winning streak with something very special to us.
Now, again, talking more about Dallas Green. So after he leaves the Phillies, he becomes the GM of the Chicago Cubs. And I guess you were part of a trade that many consider the worst trade in Phillies history. A trade of shortstops, basically. You for Ivan De Jesus,
Right.
but Dallas Green knew about this prospect named Ryan Sandberg that he wanted thrown in the deal. When back then, did you know Ryan Sandberg was going to become the Hall of Famer he became?
No, I'm not going to lie to you. I thought he was going to be a good player. I didn't think he was going to be hit home runs like he did, because when he was with our organization, he did not know how to pull the baseball. He hit everything to right center field. Good, good run, good athlete. Um, but then he came over to Chicago, and Jim Fry, who was our manager, taught him how to pull the baseball, and he went on and had as we all know, a Hall of Fame career. But I always remind him, don't forget you were the throwing in that trade. So I keep him grounded a little bit, but he was great to play with. He had a tremendous career, and as it turned out, Dallas took over there in Chicago. We ended up winning the division in '84, and they hadn't won there in a long, long time. So he got everything rolling in Chicago, and to this day, that ballpark sells out every day when they have games in Chicago. Obviously, this year with the pandemic and everything, no baseball, but Dallas got the ball rolling there in Chicago.
Right. Well, let me ask you more about managing because you are a former manager of the year from your time managing the Phillies. What do you think makes a good manager? Because you've got the managers that are hard on players like Dallas Green. You got the managers who are kind of soft on players. Does it depend on the personality of the team, or do you think one personality is better than the other?
No, I think it depends on the personality team. I think everybody's personality is different. I took over a team that lost 100 games for like 2 or 3 years in a row, and we ended up playing 500 baseball every year. But I had to change the culture in that clubhouse, which is guys were just too complacent. They accepted losing, and I'm a firm believer. You don't accept it, you deal with it and learn from your mistakes. But I think the biggest thing is being able to communicate and knowing when to pat a guy on the back and whether to kick him in the butt. Uh, and that's knowing your personnel. There's some guys that don't like that. They don't respond to kicking them in the rear end, and there's other guys that love it. And there's some guys that need constant patting them on the back and saying, "Hey, you're good. You're going to do this." So it's a combination of things. And obviously, the bottom line is you have to have talent. If you don't have talent, it doesn't matter how good you are handling the X's and O's. Uh, Talent will win some baseball games. Believe me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. You mentioned you changed the culture in the clubhouse. You kind of taught the team how to win. Then, you're gone. They bring in Charlie Manuel. Was there any resentment? And maybe resentment's not the right word, but the fact that you kind of changed the culture, you kind of set the table, if you will, and then they start winning after you're gone. Did that bother you at all?
Well, it bothered me at first, but then I look back and all those guys that I had turned out to be real good players. So I feel like I was a big part of that. Uh, I would have loved to have finish that out, let it play out. But again, in baseball, when general managers or owners want to make a change, the favorite line is, "We need a new voice," and basically that's what they said. But I was glad Charlie ended up winning the World Series and going back twice. Really, they got beat by the Yankees second time, but to this day, when Charlie and I talk, and we he even told me, he says, "Man," he says, you got them on the right track, and I got to finish it off." And I was happy for Charlie at the time, though. I did want to finish that job because I could see a lot of positive things happening, and of course they end up spending some money getting the payroll higher. When you get the payroll higher, that means you're getting better players. So it was a combination of things, but all in all, it worked out okay for me. Like I said, I would have loved to have played it out, but it didn't happen.
All right, I want to ask you just some rapid fire questions, Larry, before we wrap this up. Quick rapid fire questions here. The best player you ever played with?
The best player I ever played with on my team,
Yes.
I have to say Schmidt.
Okay.
Hall of Famer, obviously Gold Glove third baseman, prolific home run hitter. There wasn't a play he couldn't make. Uh, and if I had to pick another guy, two Hall of Famers, that's easy. Steve Carlton, but he pitched every fourth day. But I have to say Schmidt.
Speaking of Carlton, real quick, I have to ask you the 72 season when the team won what, like 59 games, I think?
Yep.
And he won 27 of those games. Was that the best season you've ever seen?
Ever in my life. It was a team that we were very young, but as a team, we knew that we didn't have a very good offense, but we knew if we got 2 or 3 runs and he was pitching, we had a good chance of winning.
Yeah.
And him walking in the clubhouse every day, the day he pitched, said, "Today's win day, boys." So he sort of gets our attention walking in the clubhouse, and it seemed like we elevated our style of play because we knew we didn't have to score 5 or 6 runs to win a baseball game. And when you have a horse out there like Carlton, you don't make mistakes behind him, and you get 1 or 2 runs, maybe 3, you have a chance of winning. But it was phenomenal what he did, winning that many games on a team that only won 50-some baseball games.
Yeah, 45% of the team's wins that year. So, okay, give me the funniest player you ever played with. I guess the player with the best personality.
Probably Jay Johnstone, who recently passed away. He kept everybody loose. He would do all kinds of stuff. And not only did he play with me in Philly, he went to Chicago when Dallas went there. And we played day games back then. There were no night. There were no lights. So there was one game about 15 minutes before the game. He's in his uniform, and there was like 15 nuns that were invited to the game. I think Dallas Green or the front office invited them. And Jay had a bunch of hat. He had his hat, and he was making collections from all the fans, and they ended up giving the money to the sisters, the nuns.
Oh wow!
Everyone's saying, "What's Jay doing up there?" The game's going to start in 10 minutes, but he kept everybody loose. He was a very good player. He was an outstanding pinch hitter coming off the bench, and I was really sad to see him pass away in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, sure. Well, let me ask you, I mean, a guy who played home games at Wrigley Field, I think I know what the answer is going to be, but the best stadium you ever played in?
Wow.
Was it Wrigley?
Wrigley was very good, but people ask me, originally I'm from California. I loved going to San Diego because the weather was perfect. I mean, wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold, and you knew you weren't getting rained out. The fact that the city was a great city. So Wrigley Field for when I played home games, but on the road it was San Diego without a doubt.
Gotcha. What about, and if it's the Vet, that's okay, the worst stadium you ever played in?
No, it wasn't the Vet. I loved the Vet. I loved playing. The surface obviously was very hard. And you might be shocked at this, but the worst stadium, now I'm talking about the playing surface when I played, not the stadium. The stadium was beautiful. The Dodger Stadium, when you looked up at the third deck and you looked down, you think that was the greatest field, smooth, the dirt was beautiful. That field would cake up in the third or fourth inning, and they didn't smooth the dirt every 3 innings there. So you would get a lot of bad hops at Dodger Stadium. But if you're sitting in the stands and you look down, beautiful. But when you start taking ground balls and the dirt gets a little chewed up, it was a very difficult place to play.
Yeah, and talking about stadiums, and in fact, I think it was Jay Johnstone who said this. He said that when he's at the plate, at the Vet, he can't tell if he's at the Vet or if he's in Atlanta or at Cincinnati or Pittsburgh. You guys played in the age of like the cookie cutter stadiums.
Yep. They were all cookie cutter stadiums. Yeah.
Right. What were your thoughts on that? Did you ever wish maybe you played, in a different time because when you were a rookie, the Phillies were still at Connie Mack Stadium, correct?
Correct. I got to play 1 year at Connie Mack. Yeah.
And that's a little bit before my time. But from what I hear, that was a great place to play and a great place to watch a game.
Great place to play. Great place to watch a game. The neighborhood was a little rough, but other than that, it was a very nice baseball park. Very nice. But I would, I was used to playing on all the cookie cutter stadiums, and so it was new at the time. But we also played on the regular grass. When we went out to the West Coast, we had all the grass fields there. Wrigley Field was a grass field, so we got to play a mixture of them. But I like the idea when you go into a baseball park now, all the little nuances of they're all different, which makes it interesting. And I think they're a lot of fun to watch games when the dimensions are different. You got different angles coming off the foul when it goes down the third base line or down the first base line. So I like the different personalities of the team now.
All right, I got two more questions, and I promise I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate your time, Larry.
All right.
You were a coach on the 1993 team, and a lot of people, even though they didn't win the World Series, a lot of people say that was their favorite team, including Harry Kalas. Harry Kalas always said that was his favorite team. Talk about the personalities on that team and how that team was able to catch lightning in a bottle.
Well, when we went to spring training, we had a lot of guys that have towards the ends of their career. And, the so-called experts make predictions where everybody's going to come in, and they had us dead last. And as we were stretching the first week of spring training, you could hear guys, talking to each other and say, "Are you kidding me? We're not coming in last." But we had a bunch of guys that played the game hard. They had been around the block. They knew exactly what it took to win baseball games. And as you said, we got on a roll, and Jim Fregosi was a great manager to play for, coach for. They loved him. We had a great coaching staff. My best buddy, John Vukovic, was one of the coaches. Mike Ryan, Johnny Padres, Dennis Minke. We had, it was old school baseball. And these guys, they didn't care who we played or where we played. They gave everything they had for 9 innings. And we ended up really one pitch away from maybe winning the World Series. We were playing a very good Toronto team, and Joe Carter hit that home run that sort of let the air out of our sails. But fun team to be around, and they left it out on the field.
Oh, they sure did, and they had personalities that matched the city. It was a blue collar group, and I think that's why people gravitated to you as well. You always have the same personality and the same work ethic as the city. And I want to end with this because, I love hearing you talk about the Philadelphia fans. A lot of people don't like the fans. They say we're hard on people. You have a different perspective, and I love your perspective on the Philadelphia fans. Can you tell us that?
I love the fans because I really believe if I played in another city, I wouldn't have been the player that I was. They make you prepare, and they'll let you know if you're not giving 100%. As you said, it's a blue-collar city, and what they want, these guys go to work at 8 in the morning. They come home at 6 at night. A lot of them punch time clocks, and a lot of them have 2 and 3 jobs. They want you to give an effort. And if you want to go through the motions, they will run you out of this city quicker than you can say baseball. But I'm telling you, I love playing in front of these fans. And, and I try to tell kids coming up now, my job, I go down to spring training and I get to talk to some of the young kids. You know what? If you guys play hard, let them know that you care. I'm not going to tell you they're not going to boo you, because if you go 0 for 15 or 0 for 20, they're going to boo you. And you know what? You got to deal with it. And I'm a firm believer that when you draft players, you better draft players that have some mental toughness to play in the city. Because if you're going out and some of the players you draft are a little soft and things go wrong, I don't think they can get through a season. You need some mentally tough players. And if you play the game the right way, at the end, they will appreciate how you play baseball.
Well, Larry, I cannot thank you enough for doing this tonight. I really appreciate your time. As I said at the top, I'm a lifelong Philadelphian, a lifelong Philadelphia sports fan, and I've been a huge fan for years, and it's a thrill to talk to you. Thank you so much for being my guest on Legends of Philly. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
One thing before I go, I've been fortunate at playing here in Philadelphia, and I look back at what's happened. I got to play the last year at Connie Mack. I got to open up the vet. I got the first hit at the vet. I got to manage the last game at the vet. I opened up Citizens Bank, and I opened up the new spring training site. So a lot of good things happened wearing that Philly uniform, and that's why this organization has been tremendous for me. And to have that many things happen, I was very fortunate and blessed.
Real quick, one more quick question, because I look at your career, I look at your statistics, and you're not in the Hall of Fame. I think you could be a Hall of Famer. What do you think about your Hall of Fame chances? And it's okay. You don't have to be modest. Do you think you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame?
So I'll be honest with you. I thought when I was done during my era that I had a chance because I looked at Phil Rizzuto and Pee Wee Reese, people that played in New York, and my numbers hit wise, average, everything was better than theirs. But again, it depends on where you play, and obviously New York being a huge media market helped them a lot. But now I look back, and now I look at players getting in now. It's a different era now, and there's obviously home runs hit. The parks are smaller. The pitching staffs, there's 5-man rotations now instead of 4. So the criteria at that time was if you were in your 10-year period, if you were one of the top 2 or 3 players at your position, you would have a chance. And at that time, I thought Davey Concepcion and myself were at the top of that list, playing shortstop. And I to this day, I still think Davey Concepcion is a Hall of Fame player. But that doesn't really. I mean, it would have been great to do that, but I look back and I can honestly tell you, I did everything I wanted to do on a baseball field. I played hard. I got over 2,000 hits, which people thought I'd never get maybe 200 hits. And I was very happy the way my career ended. Like I said, if it had happened, obviously it'd be one of the greatest things that ever happened. But if it didn't, I'm not disappointed at all because there's a lot of great players in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. But if you ask me, you deserve to be there, Larry.
I
Listen,
appreciate it.
I appreciate your time so much. I thank you so much for joining me on Legends of Philly. Again, this was a thrill. Thank you so much, Larry. Stay safe and take care.
Okay, you too. Stay safe, obey the rules, and hopefully we'll get over the 2020 year and turn the calendar for 2021 coming up.
Amen to that, my friend. Thanks, Larry. I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. You got it.
And thank you for watching Legends of Philly on PHL17.com.